to Madagascar. So it was a lot of fun, but we learned a lot. We're a really small group and provide that level of experience that the captain can or can refuse to listen to. It's the OSC's job. We simply present objective science and give choices. Now, what I'm talking about here is in all the spills I've had the pleasure of working, I've always felt that if you walk away from a spill and you haven't learned anything, it's an abject failure. It doesn't matter the size of the spill, you still should have learned a few lessons walking away. And I wanted to pick just a couple. Wait a minute. There we go. And the first, which was hit on a little bit, is local involvement, and there was a tremendous amount of local involvement in the B-120 spill, starting with a lot of the public meetings that we would go to. One of the very first we did in front of a very nervous, very concerned, and sometimes very angry town crowd, I was fairly convinced I would leave wearing tar and feathers. They were very unhappy, and Chief Francis gave us some credibility. It didn't mean that he agreed with us. It's just the community could look up and see a trusted figure saying, these guys are actually here to help. They're not the bad guys. And he allowed us to get out of that room alive and get over some of our missteps. And we certainly made a lot. Let's see. I mean, the other thing that paid off quite a bit was working with Mark Rasmussen and some of the nonprofits that are around, and the Buzzards Bay Estuary Program, who ran the website that provided the community with spill information. It was a trusted source. It wasn't from the spiller. It wasn't from the federal government. It wasn't even really from the state government. It was this trusted source, and that was invaluable. And it's been invaluable in a lot of other spills, is to bring partners in that you can trust and that the community can trust. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is some of the work we did with endangered species. Margaret talked about the loons, which were diving birds are usually the big losers at spills. They were hit very hard, partly because of the oil, partly because of the additives in the oil as well. There was naphtha added as a thinner for that oil, which caused tremendous renal damage in these birds and was really a tragedy. But the other thing to realize is that in coming through Buzzards Bay, there are a couple of islands, Ram Island and Bird Island in particular, that represent a significant portion of the nesting population of the roseate tern. Something that we knew about. We knew that they were a big part of that endangered population. And about a year before the spill, well, a couple years before the spill, at Mass Maritime, we held a conference of experts, and we brought really some of the top roseate tern folks together with some top oil spill folks, and said, what's going to happen if we have a major spill? What are our priorities going to be to protect and rescue and deal with these little critters? And it was a good orientation for the bird experts. It was a good orientation for the oil spill experts to understand what was really the level of risk. It turned out that Ram Island was hit very hard. But it also turned out that we understood what the level of risk was. What were the pathways to exposure for these particular birds? And as it turns out, not a great deal. They are, simply because of the way that they live their life, they were in pretty good stead, although the island was hit very hard and they were coming in for nesting. We learned a number of things in terms of, one of which was mentioned, in terms of not only hazing the birds off the island so that they couldn't nest, but building nesting boxes and using attractant calls, which I still don't know what the attractant call is for a roseate tern, but attractant calls on Penikese Island, and trying to move them from one island to another. I don't know how successful they've been in terms of establishing that as a nesting habitat in perpetuity, but I think some stayed. I'm hoping some still return. But that was very successful. The part that wasn't was some of the fighting and haggling and negotiating for these birds that were held with great concern. And you'll notice on the right, there's some people working in vegetated areas that are really sensitive. In any other circumstance, we wouldn't have allowed that. And we fought over this a lot. I mean, lost our tempers over this a lot. And it was a lesson learned about how to deal with perceived versus actual threat to birds or animals or habitat that is considered threatened, but maybe not sensitive. The other thing that came out of that, which I'm very proud of actually, is the planning some years later. I can thank the coalition for helping with that. I can thank Fish and Wildlife Service, the DEP, and Carolyn Mastello, who is the roseate tern whisperer for the state, and coming together with a contingency plan for terns, specifically for terns, that should be, Captain, in your contingency plan, I suspect it is, that talks about how we deal with these animals in an area that is really dominated by these birds. These or at least for that population, it represents something like at least half the North American population of the bird that comes through there at a certain time of year. So it's significant. And we put together this contingency plan that is, I don't know of any others that exist around the country that are bird specific, if you will. So that's a result of the plan. The other thing was, which has been mentioned, is the geographic response plans that are specifically for Ram Island and Bird Island. Islands are extremely difficult to protect. And with money from the state and elsewhere, we were able to do some actual booming out there, try a number of configurations. Nuka research was part of that. Senior Chief Popovich was part of that in a big way, and I think we now understand both how to better protect and how to better respond to at least these particular critters. So with that,
thank you for the memories.
Your alarm didn't go off.
No, I shut the alarm off. I don't do that in the morning either because I work from home. Chief Francis, I have to call you Chief. I can't call him Tim. All the time I've worked with him, he's been Chief Francis. We have the local perspective. We've had state, federal lessons learned. We've talked a lot about local communication and how does that coordination go, and that was really key. I worked a lot in the Fairhaven area on Hoppy's Landing with the chief. It was, we worked together, and it was interesting sometimes, but it was really, you learned a lot, and you learned about the coordination that's necessary. The chief has over 40 years experience with the Fairhaven Fire Department, kind of from the bottom to the top. Again, retired, as the rest of them are. And Chief, come up and share some experience.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank DEP and all the responsible parties for putting this together. It was a great thing to do, especially after 20 years. I can't believe it's been 20 years already for this, but I'm here just to give you our perspective as a small town. And the task that we had going forward, when we were first notified of this spill, we had already started, we knew it was heading our way. And this is where the local communication and stuff comes in when you're bringing in people from all over the country. Talking with the locals I find to be very important because nobody knows the waterways better than the people who live there. We know that a certain time of the day, the tides are gonna change, and the winds or direction is gonna change, which is gonna cause a current flow through the causeway, or whatever the case may be. So those are the things we address. So we already started booming some of our small streams and stuff before we were even going to the first meeting, because we were kind of preparing it locally, Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, myself, Chief Scott. So that was the first part of the task. Then after we went to some of the meetings at the base and realized what was gonna go on and how much oil we were really dealing with, we were concerned because Fairhaven, West Island has a scallop farms, we have oyster farms on the north side of the causeway in Little Bay, and the causeway flows with a heavy current. So once we got that figured out and how we were gonna boom it, we were cascading the boom to the beach, so the oil would all go to the beach and wouldn't go into the causeway. But we called for the Department of Fire Services to bring us a couple of command posts down, and which was very helpful for us. And we were tasked with manning those command posts. We had big cameras, we could see the whole island, Hoppy's Land and everything, watching all the workers work, and we were tasked with keeping the records of 8 o'clock in the morning, this group was going here for this beach, and so on, they were done, so on, plus answering hundreds of phone calls. We were also tasked with communications, making sure everybody could talk to each other, and that was done through the Department of Fire Services command posts. They were able to match up radios and keep everybody in communication. And sometimes it did get heated, as Mark said before. West Island had its own temper, I guess, but it would get heated between organizations and everything, but we always end up seeming to work it out and get what we needed out of it. We had Congressman Barney Frank calling, we had everybody, Representative Bill Strauss, everybody trying to help us out, getting the equipment there faster and everything. DEP, once we got all the people there working and booming and everything went pretty smoothly. The cleanup, like I said, the people were not happy on West Island, obviously, and we were fielding those calls, trying to run interference so that DEP and everybody else could do their jobs. And like he said, when we had meetings and stuff, it got a little out of hand, some of the residents and stuff, but we were able, you know, like he said, you put your trust in people, and I said, these people are here to help, and we need to get this done. But we had a lot of good input. We had a lot of manageable time. We had Hoppy's Landing got hit really hard, which is Long Island. It's really called Long Island, where they even had to dig up the whole beaches and bring in a whole new beach, and the wetlands had to be replicated and all that. So we got hit pretty hard in that area, and the people were watching constantly. So for a small town, we were a very small department at the time. We're a little bit bigger now. We were the kind of managed control and the oversight for running the interference and making sure everybody could speak, talk, lunch, and all that stuff. So it was a little bit of a burden for us, but we were able to keep it out of the north side of Little Bay, which was very important to us. That's all our clam beds, shellfish beds. We have a scallop farm there. We have an oyster farm there, everything. So we were successful in that. And Chief Scott, myself, and New Bedford Chief, we all worked together very well, booming. He helped us in Fairhaven. We helped him in Mattapoisett. Then the big crews came in and made it a lot easier for us to get that done. I think lessons learned for me, shouldn't have become fire chief, no. No, lessons learned is communication is a very important thing. Working with every organization that comes in. We met, like you said, there was teams from Louisiana, there was teams from all over the place. And everybody has their own thought process on how this should be done or whatever, but at some point in time, it had to be coordinated to the point where we all were on the same page. We would go to the meetings every morning and then a meeting at the end of the day to see where we start, where we're gonna end, what got accomplished today, so that we could communicate that to the people and make sure that they understood what we were doing. But they want it done now, they want it done today. And trying to communicate this is gonna be a long process. We were, for 3 or 4 years after that, we were still getting calls for oil on the beach and stuff, and having to send out teams. We'd get notified the DEP, they'd send out a team. We'd go out with them to mitigate whatever problems were there, and then next day you might get another one. But we were getting them for quite a few years, so this wasn't just like a couple-month thing for a small town. We also handled all the bills. All the money got spent. I've got bills here for $45,000, $35,000 through our Conservation Committee, which all got reimbursed at the end of the day. But, so we had to manage all that documentation and all that stuff, made sure it got to DEP, and then it went up the chain to where it needed to be so the town would get paid and I wouldn't get fired. But long story short, there was a lot of devastation for the smaller communities. We were the first boots on the ground before anybody else showed up, and I think we accomplished what we needed to accomplish at the end of the day. West Island is now beautiful again. Mattapoissett's beautiful again, and all the shorelines have been replicated, and you could walk the shores now and not even know it's there, or that it had been there. So I think at the end of the day, it worked out. And the best part about it is we all got boom trailers out of this. So each community, with the 10 or 15 communities, got trailers? 70, wow. Okay, even better than I thought. But the nice part is we also house the New Bedford Harbor, where we deal with oil spills. The chief now, we deal with oil spills in the harbor on a daily basis. We talk to DEP probably, we could be cousins. That's how, yeah, Andy Jones. Yeah, chief, what's up? Yeah, we got another spill in the harbor. But we're professionals at booming now in the harbor and everything. So with the equipment we have obtained because of this spill and everything else, I think we're a lot better off and we're a better community.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
You go the wrong way? Yeah. That's going to bring us to panel 2. Kathy, do we have a minute or? Have a minute. Okay, any questions? Couple of questions? Comments? Compliments? Criticisms? Oh,
I was just wondering about how you deal with all the contaminated materials and the booms, and you have designated sites set up, or how does that work? There's gotta be a ton of material.
Yeah.
And it has to be, and everything else goes along.
yeah. If there's a couple pictures on those scrolling photos that are out there where you have people in Tyvek suits cleaning and you have an entire mass of plastic bags with stuff in it. So it's kind of like, okay, we're cleaning up beaches, but we're putting things in plastic bags and they're gonna go out of state and be incinerated. That's, Clean Harbors, our oil spill response, Moran, Francorp, Clean Harbors that were our contractors, or for the Coast Guard and the Bouchard. That's one part of oil spill cleanup that's kind of a strange nexus, because what are we creating? We're cleaning up one, but we still have all that waste to get rid of. So it's not an easy question, and it's a fact. Liz, question, comment?
Well, I think they were reflecting what the public's standard on the Gulf Coast is for oil spill cleanups. There's a lot of oil drilling that goes on in the Gulf, and so if you spend the day at the beach down there, you walk along the beach, at the end of the day, you might come home and look at the bottom of your foot and there might be a black spot here and there, and they just accepted that. That was not something that they thought was unusual, whereas around here, when we would walk the beaches with those folks, and we would point out, just small little splatter on the rocks, or something like that, and they would think that it was excessive, that you're expecting that you want us to clean those tiny little spots. And so I think the cleanup workers coming from the Gulf Coast, they brought with them those same attitudes and expectations that the public down there has.
Ed?
So, Rick, you showed a slide that showed where the accident happened, the incident happened, and then it was moved to Anchorage, Lehmann. And I'm not second guessing that decision at all, but I'm interested in Steve's take on the interim where the vessel is safer and we can maybe stand it up, or in the future, should we be looking to move vessels out more into the open ocean?
I mean, that's a really hard question to answer. I think actually the barge moved itself. I don't know that it was under a captain of the port order to do that. I think once it collided with, was it hogs and sows, or what's the reef that's? Pigs and sows, something like that. It continued moving. So whether it's a good idea to get that further up into Buzzards Bay, or if it had turned around and gone back out to sea, we would have been oiling Rhode Island, Connecticut. I mean, it would have been much more expansive and maybe threatened the stability of how we could stabilize the barge. So I mean, those are places of refuge kind of issues, and we're not very good about that in this country in terms of identifying, well, any country, frankly, in terms of identifying where we can take a barge and where we can take a leaking vessel. We've seen it happen in a lot of other countries. The one off of France, their name escapes me right now, but was not allowed to come in as a result, broke in half and oiled a good part of Spain. And so we've seen that happen over and over again. It's a hard decision for an OSC to make, for a captain of the port to make, and for state officials to make, because you really would like to have something like that in a very confined area. The problem is if it's leaking or is going to leak, you're going to hammer that area. And if we look at it globally, that's okay. You've got a lot of damage in an isolated area, as opposed to less damage in a much broader area. But ultimately, that comes down to really a political decision. We don't have a good formula on how to do that.
Thank you. I think we need to move on, Kath. 5-minute break. Thank you.
I know. I'm surprised we could remember it.
Hello, we're going to be starting panel 2 shortly, so if everyone could take their seats and if the panelists could come up to the head table, that would be great. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and good morning, and thank you for coming back for panel 2. This has been a great event so far, and I'm happy to first introduce myself. I'm Kathy Kiley with MassDEP, the Emergency Planning and Response Coordinator. Some of you also know me, not just from ER and work on Southeast, but also the NRD hat that I still wear, making sure the funds go to people to do these great projects. So I'm happy to be talking in this panel, introducing the panelists for the MOSPRA and Spill Prevention section. We have a number of great candidates who will be talking a lot more detail about the program and the wonderful good work that has been taking place. Our first speaker is Steve Mahoney. He's with MassDEP, and essentially his entire career at MassDEP, he's been in a number of different aspects of the MOSPRA program. So Steve, please come up. Thank you.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So I'm titling this the MOSPRA origin story, and hopefully Disney Plus will pick this up. So, I just want to give a little background to the actual act. And, we've heard from a number of people. There are a lot of involvement getting that, especially Buzzards Bay Coalition was very involved getting the act passed. So once it's passed, what do you do? And, we had these goals. How do you implement them? What's the best means and methods? So we brought in Rich Packard from Southeast to head it up. We needed legal support. Pat Hurley was a big support with the contracts. We got some great contractors on board. So, it was a real team effort. We also, this was before my time, but there was some real foresight to create an advisory committee. And we meet pretty much annually, although we were thrown off like everything else with COVID. And, we have representatives from the Coast Guard, Petroleum Institute, Harbor Masters, Coastal Zone Management. So we try and run the gamut. So we give updates every year, and we hope to get some input. And we have over the last few years as to what we can really do to increase our preparedness, prevention, and response. So we're going to go through this line by line, and so there's 9 sections to the 21M. A lot of this stuff, we just rely on the Coast Guard. They're great partners, but, Section 5, vessel routes. Coast Guards have established that. We just rely on them. Also, vessels prohibited, that's primarily, we're transitioning from single hull to double hull. Everything's double hull now, so that's great. I'm just going to focus on kind of two sections. One's kind of an interesting one in terms of it's a core preventative measure, and the other is going to set up the rest of the speakers. So Section 6, as many of you know, anything carrying 6,000 or more barrels of oil has to have an escort. And, it's in areas of special interest. The Act describes what that is. And, there's also Mount Hope Bay, which is identified, as well as Vineyard Sound. But almost exclusively, the requirement falls on vessels coming through Buzzards Bay. So this is generally where, the operating area for our tug escorts. You don't have to read this, but the boats that we have, the compliant boats that do the escorts, one is the Buckley McAllister, and the other is the Independence. And if you guys have time and you want to see what kind of boats they are, the Independence, I just checked the Marine Vessel Tracker, which shows the AIS. Paul Locke has a small addiction to that website, and it's really cool. You can see all the vessels, but I just checked, and the Independence is tied up in the, I guess, the southeast corner, the very corner of the canal here at Mass Maritime. So if you want to check that out before you leave. But these are very capable boats. They have FIFI 1 firefighting, which is a very high level, which is usually required for, say, if they were escorting LNG tankers. So they're really great. Rheinauer and McAllister are the two companies that provide the escorts, and they've really been partners with us to ensure that this is met. And this is just some data on the escorts. What's kind of interesting, I mean, as you would expect during the pandemic, you know, the levels would fall down, less jet fuel, less gasoline. But it'll be interesting to see in 2023 if they really rebound. You know, it seems like there's a little bit of an increase, but are we going to see impacts to this from renewable energy, decarbonization, or things like that? So we do have to go and do a bigger dive on this to figure out, is there actually less coming through, or is it coming through a different way, or, you know, is it just a little bit of the post-pandemic effect? Some of the things that the escorts have provided are some assists. So a lot of it's some kind of standard, you know, some ice breaking, probably not this year, but power assists. So, you know, the current that runs through the Cape Cod canals just really can be ripping through there. So they might ask for extra assist on that. You know, one case, there was loss of steerage of the tug that was pushing the barge with the petroleum. And of course, the escort was able to, you know, get that under control quickly. This is less common, but for a long time there were a lot of, the tugboat would have the barge on a wire, but they're required to push the barge through the canal. So they would release the barge, they'd go around and get into the back of and push. So, you know, especially if it was bad weather, the escort tug would hold that in place. And just if it's bad weather, just in general, getting into terminals or anchorages. One of the other benefits has really been assisting other vessels that might not have been covered by the requirement to have an escort. In 2018, there was a ethanol barge that just got turned around in the canal. And I don't know if it was the current or what exactly it was, but the Iona McAllister had just completed an escort, and so they were